"She's only a nurse," the surgeon said, right before the dying Navy SEAL opened his eyes and whispered a name no one in that trauma room was supposed to know. In the middle of a brutal Colorado snowstorm, inside a hospital that smelled of bleach blood and burnt coffee, Clara Hayes stood in plain blue scrubs while powerful men made dangerous mistakes around her. To them, she was quiet, replaceable, someone who handed over tools and followed orders. But some people stay silent not because they're weak, but because they're carrying a past that would terrify everyone in the room. This story is about pride survival hidden war and the cost of underestimating the wrong person. Stay with me until the end because when Clara's secret comes out, the hospital will never be the same. Like the video and comment where you're watching from. Before that dying man whispered the name Vesper. Before the surgeon's face drained of color. Before the trauma bay learned that silence could be a locked door with a weapon behind it. Clara Hayes had spent the previous night doing what everyone believed she was born to do. She cleaned blood from stainless steel. She counted syringes. She restocked gauze. She moved through the emergency department of Pikes Peak Mercy Medical Center with the calm precision of someone who had made peace with chaos. Outside Colorado Springs lay under a winter storm warning. Snow pressed against the windows in hard white sheets, and the wind came down from the mountains with a low animal sound that made the glass hum. Ambulance lights smeared red across the icy pavement beyond the sliding doors. Inside, the emergency room never slept. A toddler with croup cried into his mother's coat. An old rancher with a fractured wrist cursed softly, while a resident tried to reset the bone. 2 police officers stood beside a handcuffed man with a split lip and the empty stare of someone who had lost a fight he could not remember starting. Somewhere behind curtain 4, a woman prayed in Spanish while her husband waited for a CT scan. The air smelled of antiseptic wet wool, stale coffee, and the faint copper scent that never fully left a trauma unit. Clara knew every smell, every sound, every rhythm. The sharp beep of a monitor with a loose lead. The soft click of a morphine vial being opened. The squeal of an old gurney wheel that maintenance kept promising to replace. The silence right before a family was told the news they had feared. She heard all of it without seeming to listen. Her badge read Clara Hayes RN, Trauma Unit. To most people, that was the whole story. She was 33, maybe 34, depending on how tired she looked under the fluorescent lights. Her dark blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun at the base of her skull. No jewelry except a thin black watch. No perfume. No bright shoes. No stickers on her badge. No personal photographs taped inside her locker. She wore plain navy scrubs and moved like she had learned a long time ago not to take up space unless space needed taking. The younger nurses liked her, but they did not know her. The older nurses respected her, but they stopped asking questions after the first few months. Clara could start an IV on a collapsed vein in one try. She could calm a screaming family without raising her voice. She could look at a patient from across the room and know who was pretending to be fine and who was about to crash. But she never bragged. She never stayed long in the break room. She never talked about where she came from. When someone asked, she said back east and changed the subject. When someone pressed, she smiled politely. That smile had walls. At 1:17 in the morning, Clara stood in supply room B checking the trauma airway drawer. The overhead lights flickered once as wind slammed against the building. A young nurse named Tessa Bell leaned against the doorframe hugging a stack of folded blankets to her chest. "You always do that before the snow gets bad?" Tessa asked. Clara did not look up. Do what? Check every drawer like the building is about to get invaded. Clara placed 3 laryngoscope blades into the correct slot. Snow means crashes. Crashes mean airways. Tessa stepped inside, lowering her voice as if the gauze might gossip. "Were you military or something?" Clara's hand paused for less than a second. Then she closed the drawer. "Or something." Tessa laughed, but Clara did not. The younger nurse shifted suddenly, unsure whether she had stepped too close to something private. "I did not mean anything by it." "I know." Clara took the blankets from her and placed them on the warmer shelf. Tessa watched her hands. They were steady, Too steady for the hour for the storm for the kind of shift where most people survived on caffeine and nerves. "You ever get scared?" Tessa asked. Clara turned the warmer dial down one notch. "Yes." "You never look it." Clara finally looked at her. For one brief moment her eyes seemed older than her face. "That is not the same thing." The radio at the nurse's station crackled before Tessa could answer. "Medic 12 inbound 5 minutes out. 2-vehicle collision on I-25, 1 adult male. Possible femur fracture, stable vitals." The room exhaled into motion. Tessa disappeared toward triage. Clara pulled 2 trauma packs from the shelf and carried them out without hurry. The emergency department unfolded around her in bright fragments. Nurses crossed paths without colliding. Residents searched for signatures. A paramedic shook snow from his jacket near the ambulance entrance. Somewhere the coffee machine made a dying gurgle. Clara set the trauma packs beside Bay 2. Dr. Maya Warren stood at the head of the bed, adjusting an airway cart that did not need adjusting. She was an anesthesiologist with sharp eyes and a habit of seeing more than she said. Her hair was twisted beneath a blue surgical cap patterned with tiny white moons. "You already checked that cart," Maya said. Clara opened the top drawer. "And now it is checked twice." Maya studied her. "Roads are bad, not apocalyptic. Bad roads are enough." Maya lowered her voice. "You always know where the doors are." Clara slid a roll of tape into place. "Good habit in an ER." "That is not an ER habit." Clara looked toward the ambulance entrance. The automatic doors opened as a gust of snow followed 2 paramedics inside. "In mine it is." Maya did not smile. She had been watching Clara for almost a year. Watching the way she positioned herself near walls. Watching how she never let anyone stand directly behind her for long. Watching how when a drunk patient swung at a security guard, Clara was already moving before the guard knew the punch was coming. Once during a power outage, a generator had failed for 12 seconds. 12 seconds was not long unless a ventilator stopped and a room went black. Everyone else had frozen. Clara had crossed the ICU in the dark, found the manual bag, and started breathing for the patient without knocking into a single piece of furniture. When the lights came back, she was already counting respirations. Maya had asked how she found the bed so fast. Clara had said, "I remembered." Maya had not believed that was the whole truth. The ambulance team rolled the crash victim in. The man was conscious, pale, and swearing with impressive commitment. His left thigh was swollen under torn denim. "Name is Henry Wallace," the lead paramedic said. "Restrained driver." Truck slid into the median. No loss of consciousness. Pain is 10 out of 10. Clara leaned over the patient as he groaned. "Mr. Wallace, I am Clara. We are going to take care of you." He looked at her through a grimace. "You got anything stronger than kind words?" "Several things." He gave a breathless laugh, then cursed again as the stretcher locked into place. Dr. Grant Whitaker entered Trauma Bay 2 at the exact moment everyone else was already working. That was his habit. Arrive when the room was prepared. Speak as if preparation began with him. He was 46, tall, broad-shouldered, and handsome, in the polished way of men who knew lighting mattered. His scrubs looked tailored. His silver hair was cut close at the sides. His jaw always seemed clenched, not from stress, but from disapproval. He had the hands of a gifted surgeon and the bedside manner of a judge passing sentence. Pike's Peak. Mercy treated him like a necessary storm. He was brilliant. No one denied that. He had repaired organs that other surgeons had written off. He had saved a state senator after a skiing accident, a Broncos linebacker after a rollover crash, and a child who had come in with a piece of metal buried near her heart. He also left rooms colder than he found them. "What do we have?" Whitaker asked, though the paramedic was still speaking. "Femur fracture," Maya said. "Stable. No belly signs." Whitaker glanced at the monitor. "Pain meds." Clara answered while hanging fluids. "Fentanyl ordered. Dose adjusted for pressure." Whitaker took the chart tablet from a resident and frowned. "This dose is wrong." Clara did not stop taping the IV line. "It was wrong. I corrected it before administration." The resident looked mortified. Whitaker's eyes moved to Clara. "Careful, Hayes. Confidence looks strange on you." The trauma bay became a little quieter. Henry Wallace, despite his pain, looked from Clara to Whitaker and back again. Clara finished securing the line. "Yes, doctor." Nothing in her tone invited argument. Nothing in her face showed injury. That annoyed Whitaker more than defiance. He thrived on reaction. Fear, resentment, embarrassment, gratitude. Clara gave him none of it. She took his cruelty the way stone took weather. Whitaker turned away. "Page ortho. Get imaging. And somebody find a resident who knows basic dosage before I start teaching kindergarten in here." The resident flushed. Clara handed him the chart tablet without looking at him. "You caught it before it mattered," she said softly. The resident gave her a quick, grateful glance. Whitaker heard it. His mouth tightened. The next hour passed in small emergencies. Henry Wallace went to radiology. A teenager came in with alcohol poisoning and glitter on her face from a school dance. A woman with chest pain turned out not to have indigestion, and Clara had aspirin under her tongue before the cardiology fellow arrived. The snow kept falling. The waiting room filled with damp coats and red noses. At 2:03, Clara took her first sip of coffee. It was cold. She drank it anyway. Maya found her near the nurse's station, staring through the glass doors toward the ambulance bay. The wind shoved snow sideways across the orange cones. "You have that look again," Maya said. "What look?" "The one where you are hearing something the rest of us are not." Clara set the coffee down. Beyond the normal ER noise, beyond the monitors and voices and rolling wheels, there was a gap. No sirens, no radio traffic, no paramedic chatter. For a level 1 trauma center during a mountain storm, silence could mean only two things. Either the city had gone still, or someone had taken over a channel. The wall radio clicked. Static rolled through the speaker. Then a voice came in, clipped and strained. "Pikes, Peak Mercy, this is Air Medical Command. Prepare Trauma Bay 3. 1. Critical male. Penetrating chest trauma. Multiple wounds. Military escort. ETA 6 minutes." The charge nurse, Denise Alvarez, looked up from the desk. Air Medical Command, repeat patient identity. A pause, long enough for Clara to feel it behind her ribs. Identity unavailable. Denise frowned. Unavailable how? Another burst of static. Federal classification pending. The words hit the nurse's station like a draft under a locked door. Maya looked at Clara. Clara's expression had not changed, but the room around her seemed suddenly louder. Whitaker walked out of Bay 2, pulling off gloves. "What was that?" Denise answered. "Incoming critical. Chest trauma. Military escort, no ID." Whitaker snorted. "No ID means no paperwork, not no rules." Clear trauma 3. A security guard appeared near the ambulance entrance, speaking into his shoulder radio. Then another guard came through the main hallway. Their faces were too serious for routine crowd control. Clara moved before anyone told her to. She entered Trauma Bay 3 and began preparing the room. Airway equipment first. She checked suction oxygen flow, laryngoscope light, backup blades. She laid out chest tubes, pressure dressings, vascular access kits, rapid infuser tubing, blood warmer lines. She pulled extra units of O negative from the emergency cooler and set them within reach. Tessa hurried in behind her. "What do you need?" 2 large bore IV kits, thoracotomy tray, ultrasound charged, more suction canisters. Tessa blinked. Thoracotomy. Clara looked at her. Now. Tessa ran. Maya entered next, pulling on gloves. "You heard something in that call." Clara snapped open a sterile package. "I heard what they did not say." "What does federal classification pending mean?" Clara placed the decompression needles on the tray. "It means somebody important is bleeding, and somebody else wants the paperwork to disappear until they know who survives." Maya stared at her. "Clara." The ambulance bay doors opened in the distance. A roar of wind moved through the department. Not sirens, not wheels. Boots. Heavy boots. Fast. 4 men in dark tactical gear came through the doors around a stretcher, snow melting off their helmets and body armor. Their faces were partly covered. No name tapes, no unit patches, no hospital visitor badges. Rifles hung tight against their chests, muzzles down, but ready. The ER stopped pretending it was normal. One of the guards reached for his radio. The lead operator's head turned slightly. That was enough. The guard froze. The stretcher slammed into Trauma Bay 3. The patient on it was enormous, built like a man carved out of rope and iron, but blood had made him human. His shirt had been cut open in the field. Combat dressings covered his chest and right flank. One thigh was wrapped in a tourniquet. His skin had the waxy gray color Clara had seen too many times, the kind that meant the body was still present but already negotiating with death. Move, the lead operator barked. Whitaker strode in behind the team. Get these men out of my bay. The operator did not look at him. We stay with the package. Whitaker's eyes sharpened. This is a hospital, not a barracks. The operator stepped close enough that the wet, black armor nearly touched Whitaker's chest. Then keep him alive like it is one. The room tightened. Clara stepped between them, one hand already cutting through the patient's blood-soaked fabric. Bay 3, transfer on my count, 1, 2, 3. The operators moved. So did the nurses. So did Whitaker, though anger flashed across his face when he realized he had obeyed her timing. The patient landed on the trauma table with a heavy thud. Maya took the airway position. Pulses rapid. Pressure. Tessa called from the monitor. 78/46. Clara's scissors opened the last of the shirt. Blood glistened across the patient's ribs. Bruising spread under the right collarbone. His chest rose unevenly. Whitaker snapped gloves onto his hands. What do we know? The lead operator answered. Male, late 30s. Multiple gunshot wounds. 2 to the upper torso, 1 to right flank. Blast exposure. Tourniquet placed 28 minutes ago. Pressure dropped in flight. Name. No name. Whitaker gave a humorless laugh. I cannot operate on a ghost. The operator leaned in. Then pretend ghosts bleed. Clara pressed 2 fingers against the patient's neck. Fast pulse. Weak. Fading at the edges. She looked at his chest. Right side barely moving. Neck veins rising. Trachea not centered. A cold line of recognition moved through her body, but she kept it away from her face. Maya inserted the airway scope. There is blood in the airway. Suction. Clara handed it to her before the word finished. Whitaker moved toward the patient's neck with the central line kit. He is bleeding out. Massive transfusion. Prep central access. Clara's eyes stayed on the chest. Doctor, wait. Whitaker did not. Pressure is crashing, Tessa said. 64/38. Clara reached for the decompression needle. His right lung is down. Whitaker looked up slowly. What did you say? The chest wound is not the immediate problem. He has a tension pneumothorax. His heart is being compressed. Maya's eyes flicked to the monitor. Oxygen saturation fell from 86 to 82, then 79. Whitaker's voice hardened. I can see the monitor, nurse. He needs decompression before the line. He needs access before he has no blood left to circulate. Clara looked at the patient's face. There was blood in his beard. A scar cut through one eyebrow. Under the mess of bruising and oxygen tubing, something about him pressed against memory. A black rook tattoo marked the skin near his left ribs, half hidden beneath blood. Her breath stopped inside her chest. Not long, not enough for anyone to notice. But inside Clara a door opened. Dust rolled through it. Night sky. Rotor wash. Men shouting under green light. A gloved hand gripping hers in the dark. Rook. The lead operator saw her see it. His eyes changed behind the visor. Whitaker stepped directly into her space. Prep the line haze. Clara did not move. The patient's oxygen saturation dropped again. 74. Maya's voice sharpened. He is not ventilating. Whitaker snapped at Clara. Now. Clara looked from the shifting trachea to the needle tray, then to the man bleeding on the table, then to Whitaker standing in the way with all his titles and certainty. Around them, the storm beat against the glass. Inside Trauma Bay 3, every monitor seemed to be counting down. Clara reached for the needle. The movement was small, almost gentle, but the room felt it. Dr. Grant Whitaker saw her hand slide toward the tray, and his expression changed from irritation to fury, the kind of fury that came from a man who believed disobedience was more dangerous than death. He stepped closer, blocking her shoulder with his body, his gloved hand still holding the central line kit. "Do not touch that," he said. Clara's fingers closed around the angiocath. The wounded man on the table gave a shallow, broken breath. His ribs lifted unevenly, then froze for half a second before falling again. The ventilator bag in Dr. Maya Warren's hands grew stiff. She squeezed once harder and felt resistance push back against her palms. Maya looked at Clara, then at the monitor. Oxygen saturation 71. Heart rate 154. Blood pressure unreadable for 3 beats, then 58/30. Grant Maya said, her voice low and tight, "She may be right." Whitaker did not turn. "She is not diagnosing my patient." The lead operator at the foot of the bed shifted his weight. Water dripped from his armor onto the floor. His rifle stayed angled down, but his whole body had gone still the way predators went still before deciding whether something in front of them needed to die. Clara saw it without looking directly at him. She also saw Tessa frozen beside the blood-warmer eyes wide above her mask. She saw the resident holding pressure on the flank wound, both hands slick red, waiting for an order that would make sense. She saw Maya fighting the airway. She saw Whitaker standing in the center of all of it, brilliant and wrong. Most of all, she saw the man's neck. The trachea had shifted farther left. His right chest had become a sealed drum. His heart was trapped inside him. Clara took one breath. It entered her body as hospital air, cold and chemical. It left as desert air, hot and full of dust. For one sharp instant, Trauma Bay 3 was gone. She was crouched in a shattered room outside Al-Hasaka with mortar fire, walking closer across the street, one hand inside a soldier's chest wound, another man screaming for his mother in a language he had not spoken since childhood. A medic bag lay open in blood and sand. Someone shouted her call sign through smoke. "Vesper." She blinked. The hospital returned. Whitaker's voice cut through the monitor alarms. "Prep the central line, Hayes. That is an order." Clara looked at the patient's face. The black rook tattoo near his ribs stared up through smeared blood. Ethan Rourke. Rook. A man who should not be here. A man who should not be alive. A man who had once dragged her through a collapsing alley with a bullet in his own shoulder because she refused to leave a wounded interpreter behind. He had carried her ghosts. Now she was holding his life. No, Clara said. The word was quiet. That made it worse. Whitaker's head snapped toward her. "What did you say?" Clara stepped around him. Whitaker grabbed her wrist. It was an instinctive move, not quite violent, but hard enough to stop most nurses in most rooms. Clara stopped. Slowly, she looked down at his hand. Then she looked back at him. There was nothing dramatic in her face. No rage, no fear, no threat. Only a calm so complete that Whitaker's grip loosened before he understood why. "Let go of me," she said. For the first time that night, no one mistook her softness for obedience. Whitaker released her wrist, but his voice rose. "Security." No one moved. The monitor screamed again. The line went flat. A single continuous tone filled the trauma bay. Tessa made a small sound. Maya froze with the bag in both hands. The resident looked at Whitaker, waiting. The lead operator whispered something that sounded like a prayer. Whitaker shoved forward and placed both hands on Rourke's chest. "Start compressions." Clara caught his forearm. "Compressions will not fix this." Whitaker tried to wrench away. "He has no pulse. Because his heart cannot fill. Move. If you compress him now, you waste the last seconds he has." Whitaker shoved her shoulder. "Step back. You are only a nurse." The words hit the room with more force than his hand. Clara stumbled half a step. Then everything in her went still. The noise became distant. The monitor tone thinned into a single wire of sound. Her vision narrowed to anatomy space pressure angle. She did not feel insult. She did not feel fear. She felt time, and time was almost gone. Clara moved. She drove her left shoulder into Whitaker with enough force to knock him off balance. He stumbled sideways, striking the metal edge of the instrument cart. The central line kit slipped from his fingers and scattered sterile drapes across the floor. "Hayes," he shouted. She did not hear him as a person anymore. He was just noise near a dying patient. Clara found the second intercostal space by touch. Her gloved fingers pressed once precise and practiced. She angled the needle over the rib, avoiding the bundle of nerve and vessel beneath. Her hand did not shake. Maya stared at her. The operator stared at her. Whitaker drew breath to yell again. Clara buried the needle into Rourke's chest. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the room hissed. It was loud, sharp, almost animal. Trapped air burst from the catheter, carrying a thin spray of blood across Clara's glove. The resistance in Maya's bag eased at once. Rourke's chest rose more evenly. The awful pressure inside him began to surrender. The flat tone broke. A spike appeared on the monitor, then another. Then a ragged rhythm. Tessa sobbed once and clapped a hand over her own mouth. "Pulse," Maya said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I have a pulse." The lead operator closed his eyes for 1 second. Not long enough to look weak, just long enough to stay human. Blood pressure reappeared, 72/40, then 78/44. The oxygen saturation climbed from nothing to 68, then 74, then 79. Clara secured the catheter and reached for a chest tube tray. "Now he needs the tube," she said. "Right side, 5th intercostal. He still has blood in the chest." No one answered. The entire bay had gone silent except for the monitors and Rourke's rough mechanical breathing. Whitaker pushed himself away from the cart. His face had gone dark red above his mask. For a few seconds he looked less like a surgeon than a man who had been slapped in public and could not decide whether to strike back or pretend he had not felt it. "You assaulted me," he said. Clara kept her hands on the patient. He was dead. "You performed an invasive procedure without authorization. He is alive. You do not make that call." Clara finally looked at him. The quiet in her eyes was worse than anger. "I just did." Whitaker stepped toward her. The lead operator moved with him. Not much, just 1 foot forward. Whitaker noticed. So did everyone else. The operator's voice came from behind his mask, flat and cold. "Doctor, she saved my commander." Whitaker's gaze flicked to the rifle, then back to Clara. "This is still my trauma bay." "No," Clara said, checking the wound seal. "It is his trauma bay until we get him stable." The operator almost smiled. Whitaker did not. Maya cleared her throat, choosing the patient because someone had to. "Pressure is coming up. We need blood running faster. Clara, chest tube setup. Tessa, call the OR and tell them we need a room open now. Resident, keep pressure on the flank. Nobody touches that tourniquet." Whitaker rounded on her. "Maya." She met his eyes. "Grant, not now." That cut him deeper than Clara's defiance. For once, someone else with letters after her name had chosen the nurse's judgment over his pride. The trauma team moved again, but the rhythm had changed. Before they had moved around Whitaker. Now they moved around the patient. Clara could feel it. It was the difference between a room obeying a man and a room fighting death. She opened the chest tube tray. Whitaker snatched a clamp from the sterile field. "I will do it." Clara stepped aside because the patient needed the procedure more than Clara needed to win. Whitaker made the incision with the sharp, controlled motion of a surgeon who had done this 1,000 times. His hands were excellent. That was the cruel part. He was not incompetent. He was gifted. Gifted enough to trust himself too much. The tube went in. Blood drained dark and fast into the chamber. Maya watched the numbers. Better. Saturation 86, pressure 90/52. The resident breathed out. Tessa moved quickly with new units of blood, her face pale but focused. The operators remained in the corners like shadows carrying rifles. Clara leaned over Rourke and checked his pupils with a penlight. Beneath the swelling and blood, his eyes moved faintly under closed lids. Ethan, she whispered before she could stop herself. Maya heard. So did the lead operator. Whitaker heard the name too. His gaze sharpened. You know him. Clara straightened. I read the tattoo. That is not an answer. It is the one you are getting. Whitaker opened his mouth, but Rourke's right hand moved. The motion was small at first, 2 fingers curling against the sheet. Then his whole hand lifted with sudden force, searching blindly. Clara caught his wrist before he ripped the lines free. Rook, she said softly. Easy. You are stateside. Hospital. You are safe. His eyelids fluttered. Maya leaned in. He should not be surfacing. He is fighting the sedation, Clara said. Whitaker scoffed. With that pressure, that blood loss, and that airway, he is not conscious. Rourke's hand shot upward. It found Whitaker's scrub collar and clamped down. The room jolted. Whitaker gagged as he was pulled forward. His gloved hands grabbed at Rourke's wrist, but the wounded man's grip was iron, even half dead. Rourke's eyes opened. They were pale blue fever bright and terrifyingly aware. For a second, he did not seem to know where he was. Then his gaze found Clara. Everything in him changed. His grip on Whitaker tightened. A sound dragged from his throat, raw around the tube and blood. Vesper. Clara went cold. The name did not fill the room loudly. It did not need to. It moved through her like a bullet finding an old wound. Maya looked at Clara. Tessa looked at Clara. The operators looked at Clara as if a locked file had suddenly opened in front of them. Whitaker's face twisted between pain and confusion. What did he call you? Rourke's eyes stayed on Clara. He tried to speak again, but the tube stopped him. Maya reached toward his airway. Do not pull, she warned. You will tear something. Rourke ignored her and reached for the tape. Clara caught his hand. Number. His eyes pleaded with her. Not with fear, with urgency. Clara knew that look. He had information. Something bigger than pain. Bigger than survival. She leaned close enough that only he could hear. Blink once if the mission was compromised. He blinked once. Clara's stomach dropped. Blink once if they followed you stateside. One blink. The lead operator shifted behind her. Clara did not look away from Rourke. Is the package still with you? Rourke's fingers tightened around Whitaker's collar. His eyes moved downward to his own chest, then back to hers. Clara understood enough to feel the air change. Whitaker choked. Get him off me. Rourke dragged him closer with one brutal pull. Maya reached for a sedative. Clara stopped her with a look. Rourke forced sound through the tube, each word tearing at him. You have no idea who she is. Then his strength failed. His hand fell from Whitaker's collar. Whitaker stumbled back, coughing, one hand at his throat. Maya pushed medication through the IV. Rourke's eyes closed, but not before they found Clara one last time. In that look was a warning. In that warning was a war. Whitaker recovered his voice in pieces. Get him to surgery, he snapped, because anger was the only place he knew how to stand. Now, and get her out of my sight. No one moved for half a second. Then the bay erupted again. The transport team rolled in. Tessa disconnected lines with trembling fingers. Maya secured the airway. Whitaker walked beside the stretcher, reclaiming command by force of volume. Clara walked with them until the OR doors. Whitaker turned in the hall. You are not coming in. Clara held his gaze. He needs someone who knows what happened to him. He needs surgeons. He needs both. Whitaker stepped closer. You are suspended from this case. After tonight, you may be suspended from nursing. I will file the report myself. Clara looked past him through the narrow glass windows of the operating suite. Rourke vanished under bright lights. File whatever helps you sleep. Whitaker's eyes narrowed. You think this is a game? Clara's voice lowered. No, I think you almost lost a man because your pride was louder than his symptoms. For a moment, Whitaker looked as if he might strike her. Then Maya appeared beside them, still wearing blood-streaked gloves. Grant, we need you. He looked at Maya, then at Clara. This is not over. Clara did not answer. Whitaker pushed through the OR doors. Maya stayed. Her expression had changed. Curiosity had become concern. Clara, she said quietly, who is Vesper? Clara stared at the closed doors. The fluorescent lights hummed above them. Somewhere down the hall, a floor cleaner squeaked over tile. The hospital intercom called for a respiratory therapist on 4 South. Normal sounds. Civilian sounds. She had built a life out of sounds like that. "I do not know anymore," Clara said. Maya studied her face. "That is not a denial." "No." "Are we in danger?" Clara looked toward the elevator bank. The operators had not followed Rourke into surgery. 2 remained near the hallway speaking low into encrypted radios. Their shoulders were tense. Their eyes never stopped moving. "Yes," Clara said. Maya's jaw tightened. How much danger? Clara pulled off her bloody gloves 1 finger at a time. "They brought him here without a name. His team has no patches. His escort does not trust hospital security. He was compromised overseas and tracked into a civilian trauma center during a storm." Maya went still. "You got all that from a tattoo and some gear." Clara dropped the gloves into the biohazard bin. "No." Maya waited. Clara looked at her. "I got that because men like him do not end up here unless every safer place has already failed." Maya swallowed. The OR doors opened briefly as a nurse stepped out for more blood. Clara saw a flash of Rourke under surgical lights, his body surrounded by masked figures, machines, tubes, steel. Then the doors shut again. The lead operator approached Clara. He removed his helmet, but not the tension from his face. He was younger than she expected, maybe early 30s, with wet brown hair plastered to his forehead and a cut along his cheek. "You knew his call sign," he said. Clara looked at him. "You heard wrong." "No, ma'am, I did not." "Ma'am, not nurse, not Hayes." Something in his tone carried recognition or maybe rumor. Clara glanced down the hall. "Your comms secure." He hesitated. "They are supposed to be." "That is not what I asked." His face changed. He reached for his radio, then stopped. Clara saw the moment he understood. If the mission was compromised, nothing connected to the mission could be trusted. Not codes, not channels, not names, not even uniforms. He lowered his hand. "What do we do?" Clara almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because for 2 years no one at Pikes Peak Mercy had asked her that kind of question. They asked where supplies were. They asked whether labs had come back. They asked if she could cover another shift, find another vein calm, another family absorb another insult. No one asked her how to survive an ambush. She looked toward the OR. "First, you stop saying his name in hallways." The operator nodded once. "Second, you find out who knew he was being brought here. Federal Command Transport Team Hospital Administration. Too many. I can lock down the floor. Quietly. If you make noise, whoever is listening will know you know." He studied her. "You really are her, aren't you?" Clara did not answer. From the OR, a muffled alarm sounded. Maya turned toward the doors. Clara did not move. The alarm stopped after 3 seconds. Controlled. Surgical. Not the problem. Her eyes remained on the hallway. At the far end, near the staff elevators, a man in a maintenance jacket stood beside a vending machine. He held a clipboard. His cap was pulled low. He looked ordinary enough that no one else noticed him. But Clara saw his shoes. Dry. Everyone coming from outside had wet shoes. The man looked up. Their eyes met. Only for a second. Then he turned and walked through a service door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." Clara stepped forward. Maya caught her arm. "What?" Clara gently removed Maya's hand. "Lock the OR doors." "Why?" Clara was already moving, because the hospital just got smaller. She followed the maintenance man through the service door and into a narrow back corridor lined with laundry bins and oxygen carts. The sound changed immediately. The ER noise faded behind fire-rated walls. Here there was only the buzz of old lights and the distant groan of pipes. The corridor was empty. Too empty. Clara walked without rushing. Her reflection moved beside her in dark interior windows. Navy scrubs, blood on one sleeve, hair still tight, badge still clipped to her chest. Clara Hayes, RN. The name looked almost innocent. At the next corner she stopped. A wet footprint marked the tile, then another. The maintenance man had dry shoes. Someone else had been there. Clara crouched and touched the print with 2 fingers. Melted snow. Fresh. She looked toward the stairwell door at the end of the corridor. A soft click came from behind it. Metal against metal. Not loud. Not accidental. Someone chambering around carefully. Clara stood. Her heart did not race. It settled. Slow and deep. A civilian nurse would run. A good nurse would call security. A reasonable woman would tell herself she had already done enough for one night. Clara looked back toward the operating room where Ethan Rourke lay open under lights, carrying a secret inside his wounded body that armed men were willing to chase through a snowstorm. Then she reached to the crash cart beside the wall and opened the bottom drawer. Inside were trauma shears, pressure dressings, tape restraints, saline, and a heavy metal laryngoscope handle. Not a weapon. Not officially. Clara wrapped her fingers around it and turned toward the stairwell. Behind the door, someone whispered into a radio, confirming location. 6th floor access clear after surgery. Clara closed the drawer without a sound. The hospital had not been breached yet. It had been entered. And nobody but her seemed to know the difference. Clara did not open the stairwell door. She stood close enough to feel the cold bleeding through the metal, one hand wrapped around the laryngoscope handle, the other resting flat against the wall. The voice behind the door had gone silent, but silence was never empty. Silence had weight. It carried breathing fabric, shifting the small scrape of a boot turning on tile. She counted 1 man, maybe 2. Not enough for an assault. Enough for eyes inside the building. Clara backed away from the door without letting her shoes squeak. The fire alarm panel hummed above her shoulder. A linen cart sat crooked against the wall, stacked high with folded sheets. She took 1 sheet from the top, twisted it into a thick rope, and tied it around the push bar of the stairwell door. Then she ran the loose end around the metal handle of an oxygen cart and pulled until the fabric went tight. It would not hold against force. It would make noise. Sometimes that was enough. She returned to the operating corridor just as Maya stepped out, her mask hanging loose beneath her chin. "Where did you go?" Maya asked. Clara looked past her into the bright mouth of the operating suite. Rourke. Alive. For now. Whitaker repaired the flank bleed and placed a second chest tube. He is angry enough to keep the man alive just to prove a point. That may be useful. Maya followed Clara's gaze toward the service corridor. What happened? Someone came in through the hospital before the storm locked the roads. Maya's face tightened. You saw him. I heard him. That is not an answer. It is the one we have time for. The lead operator approached from the hall. His helmet was back on. His rifle was up now, not at anyone, but ready in the way that changed how everyone nearby breathed. Clara stepped close enough that her voice would not carry. South stairwell. At least 1. Possible spotter. Quiet radio discipline. He used the words 6th floor access clear after surgery. The operator went still. We cleared that stairwell. Then someone uncleared it. His eyes sharpened. Who are you? Clara looked toward the OR doors. Behind them, Ethan Rourke lay cut open and full of tubes, carrying whatever had turned a winter hospital into a battlefield. Right now, I am the person telling you not to use your radio. The operator studied her for 1 hard second, then gave 2 hand signals to the man by the elevator. No words. No radio. The second operator disappeared down the hall with the soundless speed of someone trained to move through sleeping houses. Maya watched all of this, her face pale under the surgical cap. Clara, she said, tell me there is a plan. Clara looked at the bank of elevators, the public hallway, the service doors, the small cameras in the ceiling. There is a patient. That is not a plan either. No, Clara said, it is the reason for one. The next hour stretched thin. The operators found no one in the south stairwell, only a clipped length of black communication wire beneath the landing, and a smear of wet snow melting into the concrete. The service door on the second floor had been forced from the outside and then carefully reset. Security claimed nothing appeared on the cameras. Maintenance claimed the camera near that door had gone down during the storm. Clara believed neither of them. By dawn, Rourke came out of surgery alive, not stable in the way families understood the word. Stable in the way trauma people used it when death had stepped back but had not left the room. He was moved to the sixth-floor ICU, into a glass-front isolation room at the end of a short corridor that could be sealed from both sides. The official chart called him Ethan Ross, male 38 industrial accident. No one wrote Navy. No one wrote gunshot. No one wrote Syria. No one wrote classified. The hospital administrator arrived in a wool coat over pajamas and whispered with men in dark suits near the elevators. By breakfast, half the sixth floor had been emptied. Patients were transferred with vague explanations about plumbing problems. Visitors were turned away. 2 federal guards took chairs by the nurses' station and pretended to read old magazines while their eyes tracked every person who stepped off the elevator. Clara watched them from behind the medication cart. They were better than hospital security. They were not good enough. One drank coffee with his left hand, but carried his weight like his weapon was on the right. The other checked his phone too often for someone guarding a classified patient. Both had clean shoes, cheap suits, and the nervous boredom of men who had been told a story they did not fully believe. At 9:40, Dr. Grant Whitaker tried to have Clara removed from Rourke's care team. By 9:47, he learned that his authority had a ceiling. A man from the Department of Defense arrived with no entourage, no raised voice, and no patience. He spoke with the administrator behind a closed door for less than 4 minutes. When the door opened, the administrator looked 10 years older, and Clara's name remained on the assignment board. Whitaker found her outside the ICU room just after noon. His scrub top was fresh. His hair was perfect. A bruise darkened one side of his collarbone where Rourke had pulled him down in the trauma bay. "You have friends in strange places, Hayes." Clara checked the rate on Rourke's medication pump. "No doctor. I have patients in strange places." His eyes narrowed. "You think last night made you untouchable?" "No." "Good. Because when this circus is over, there will be a review." She glanced at him. "There should be." That stopped him for half a beat. Then anger rescued him. "You endangered my patient. You are welcome to put that in writing." "I will." "Include the part where his pulse returned." Whitaker stepped closer, lowering his voice so the guards would not hear. "You do not get to act superior because you got lucky." Clara looked through the glass at Rourke. He lay beneath white sheets, his chest rising with the rhythm of the ventilator. Tubes entered him from too many places. A bruised hand rested against the rail. The black rook tattoo was hidden beneath dressings now, but Clara could still see it in her mind. "Luck is what people call skill when they do not want to admit they missed something," she said. Whitaker's jaw worked. Before he could answer, Maya approached from the nurse's station with a chart tablet. "Pressure is holding," she said. "Urine output improved. Lactate is down." Whitaker snatched the tablet. "I can read numbers, Maya. I was not sure you were reading the room." He looked at her sharply. Maya held his stare without blinking. The ICU monitors kept beeping. The storm outside had softened by then, but the city remained buried under snow. Through the windows at the end of the hall, Colorado Springs looked distant and muffled, as if someone had wrapped the world in gauze. By the second night, Rourke began to surface. Clara noticed before the machines did. His breathing changed first. The ventilator pushed air in a steady pattern, but Rourke started fighting it not wildly, not like a confused patient, but with the controlled resistance of a man waking inside a threat. His fingers curled against the sheet. His shoulders tightened. His heart rate rose by 10, then 15. Clara lowered the sedative slightly and leaned close. "Rook," she said softly. "You are stateside. Colorado Springs. Pikes Peak Mercy. You are not in the field." His eyelids flickered. Maya stood at the head of the bed watching the monitor. "He is coming up fast." Whitaker entered with 2 residents behind him. "Why is his propofol down?" Clara did not look away from Rourke. "Because he is breathing over the vent and fighting the tube." "I did not order that." He was surfacing through the dose. Whitaker came around the bed. "We keep him under another 12 hours. His repairs need rest. Clara looked at the restraints, then at Rourke's hand. His thumb moved once against his palm. A signal. Old. Intentional. Danger. He needs to wake Clara, said. Whitaker laughed once, cold and short. He needs a surgeon, managing his recovery, not a nurse chasing battlefield fantasies. Rourke's hand shot up. He caught Whitaker by the wrist this time and twisted just enough to make the surgeon gasp. The residents jumped back. Maya reached for the airway. Clara stepped into Rourke's line of sight. "Ethan, look at me." His eyes opened. For a moment, they were empty with pain. Then they found her. His grip on Whitaker loosened. Vesper he rasped around the tube. Clara swallowed. "Not here." His eyes hardened. He reached for the tape holding the tube in place. Maya moved to stop him. Clara raised one hand. "Let me." Whitaker stared at her. "You cannot be serious." Clara leaned close to Rourke. "If I take it out, you do not move. You do not sit up. You do not try to be useful. Blink if you understand." He blinked once. Whitaker snapped, "Absolutely not." Maya looked at the ventilator waveform, then at the patient. "He is initiating. He has a cough. If we keep fighting him, he may rip it out himself." Whitaker's face flushed. "This is not a vote." "No," Clara said. "It is an airway." She deflated the cuff and withdrew the tube with smooth care as Rourke gagged, coughed, and sucked in his first raw breath on his own. Maya placed oxygen at his face. His whole body trembled with the effort not to move. For several seconds he only breathed. Then he turned his head toward Clara. "You should not be here." Her voice stayed low. "I work here." "No," he whispered. "You hide here." The words landed where he meant them to. Whitaker looked between them. "What is this?" Rourke ignored him. "Extraction burned," he said. "Northern Syria. Safe house was already hot when we hit the ground. They had our route, our codes, our timing." Clara felt the room tighten around her. "Who? I do not know." "Survivors." Rourke's eyes flickered. That was answer enough. Maya went very still. The residents looked frightened and confused, trapped between medicine and something far beyond medicine. Rourke's voice scraped out in pieces. "Iron Harbor Group. Private military contractor. They were moving people through black sites and calling it logistics. Defector had proof. Names, payment channels, kill lists." Whitaker's face twisted. "This patient is delirious." Clara did not look at him. "Quiet." He took a step back as if the word had struck him. Rourke lifted one shaking hand toward his chest. "Drive." Clara followed the motion. "You still have it." His eyes stayed on hers. "I swallowed it before they reached me." Maya exhaled slowly. Whitaker looked ill. "You swallowed a data drive." Rourke gave him a ghost of a smile. "Better than letting them have it." Clara leaned closer. "Do they know?" "They know I took it. They may not know where I put it." A monitor beeped faster. Rourke's breath caught. Clara checked the dressing at his side. No fresh bleed. Pain, fear, adrenaline. Easy. He gripped the sheet. "They will come for me." They already did. His eyes cut to hers. Clara told him about the service corridor, the stairwell, the missing camera, the voice on the radio. She kept it brief and clean. Rourke closed his eyes. When he opened them again, the soldier was fully present. "Then your guards are dead men who do not know it yet." One of the federal guards appeared at the glass, looking in with mild concern. Clara watched him carefully. He gave no signal, no alarm. Just a man doing a job he did not understand. "Who knew you were brought here?" she asked. "Transport, command, maybe one person at Langley." "Keen." Rourke's eyes shifted. "You still remember his name?" "I remember debts. He sent us." Clara looked toward the snowy window. "Samuel Keene." The name carried the taste of bad coffee-secure rooms and orders that sounded clean until people started dying. Whitaker found his voice again. "I am calling hospital security and the police. This has gone beyond absurd." Rourke stared at him. "You do that, and you might tell the wrong man exactly where I am." Whitaker shook his head. "You expect me to believe there are assassins inside my hospital?" Clara looked at the empty guard chair by the elevator. The first chair had gone empty, then the second. Both magazines lay on the floor. No spilled coffee, no alarm, no scuffle. Just absence. Yes, Clara said. The ICU room seemed to shrink. Maya followed Clara's stare through the glass. Oh, God. Whitaker turned. The hallway beyond the room was quiet. Too quiet. A man stepped into view from the elevator bank. He wore a gray suit under a dark overcoat. His hair was neatly trimmed. His shoes were polished. A gold badge appeared in his hand as he approached the glass door with the practiced confidence of someone used to being obeyed. He knocked once and entered before anyone answered. "Special Agent Daniel Cross, FBI," he said. "I need everyone except the patient to clear the room." His smile was calm. His voice was easy. His eyes were wrong. Clara saw it before he finished the sentence. Real federal agents looked at rooms. They looked at hands. They looked at corners, exits, blind spots, threats. This man looked only at Rourke and not with concern. He measured distance, angle, obstruction. His suit jacket hung slightly heavier on the right, not a standard bureau carry. His badge was real enough to pass a glance and wrong enough to get someone killed. Whitaker sagged with relief. Thank God. Agent, I am Dr. Grant Whitaker. This entire situation has become completely irrational. The patient has assaulted staff, this nurse has ignored direct medical orders, and now they are talking about some private army inside my hospital. Understood, Dr. Cross said, still smiling. Please step into the hall. Clara moved between him and the bed. Cross looked at her for the first time. His smile did not change. Ma'am. Clara's voice was soft. Dr. Whitaker, get down. Whitaker stared at her. Excuse me. Rourke's hand tightened around the bed rail. Maya stepped back toward the oxygen controls. Clara did not blink. Get down. Cross's smile vanished. His hand slid under his jacket. Clara reached for the metal IV pole beside the bed. Whitaker finally saw the gun as it cleared the coat. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. The pistol rose toward Clara's chest. The room filled with one hard breath. Then the suppressor coughed. The sound was small, almost insulting for the damage it carried. The round missed Clara by inches and struck the glass door of the fluid warmer behind her. Warm saline burst outward in a glittering sheet spraying across the wall, the floor, the foot of Rourke's bed. Maya ducked hard beside the ventilator stand. Whitaker screamed and dropped to the tile, both hands over his head, all his command, and polished authority stripped away in one breath. Clara did not fall. She moved into the shot. That was what the untrained never understood. Fear pulled people backward. Training taught the body to move through the narrow space between death and hesitation. Cross adjusted his aim. Clara caught the IV pole with both hands and drove it sideways into his forearm. The second shot cracked into the ceiling panel, showering white dust into the room. Cross grunted and stepped in fast, trying to close distance before she could turn his weapon away again. He was good. Not street good, not panic good. Trained good. His left hand came up toward her throat. Clara let it come. She slipped inside the reach, drove her elbow into the soft line beneath his ribs, then smashed the heel of her palm under his jaw. His teeth snapped together with a wet click. His pistol arm dipped just enough. Clara grabbed his wrist. For a moment, they were locked together beside Rourke's bed, two bodies fighting in silence except for breath and rubber soles sliding on wet tile. Cross had size and fresh muscle. Clara had angle pain and memory. He tried to turn the pistol toward Maya. Clara slammed his hand into the steel bed rail. Once. Twice. The gun clattered free and skidded beneath the rolling tray. Cross threw his head forward. Pain flashed white through Clara's face as his forehead caught her cheekbone. Her vision sparked. He reached for a knife under his coat. Rourke saw it. Weak as he was, he tore one hand free from the blanket and caught Cross by the sleeve. It was not much. It was enough. Clara drove her knee into Cross's thigh, hooked his arm, and spun him into the monitor stand. The screen rocked violently. The heart monitor shrieked as leads pulled tight across Rourke's chest. Cross recovered faster than most men could fall. He hit Clara in the ribs with a short punch that stole her breath, then drove her backward into the medication cabinet. Bottles rattled inside. The knife flashed up silver and close. Maya shouted her name. Clara caught Cross's wrist with both hands, the blade trembling an inch from her neck. His face was inches from hers now. Calm, focused, empty. "You should have stayed buried," he whispered. Clara's eyes sharpened. "So should you." She shifted her weight, let her knees buckle, and dropped under his force. Cross overcommitted. Clara used his momentum against him, turning hard, driving his knife hand into the cabinet edge. Bone struck metal. His fingers opened. The knife fell. Clara caught it before it hit the floor. Cross saw the mistake in the same instant she used it. She drove the blade into the meat of his upper arm, not deep enough to kill, deep enough to turn his strength into fire. His body recoiled. Clara swept his legs from under him. He hit the tile hard, reaching with his good hand for the pistol under the tray. Clara got there first. Her fingers wrapped around the grip. Cross rolled toward her. She fired twice into his chest. The body armor caught the rounds, but the force flattened him long enough for Clara to rise. He wheezed, stunned, still alive, still dangerous. His hand moved toward the second weapon at his ankle. Clara fired once more. The room went still. Not quiet. Never quiet. The monitor beeped too fast. Oxygen hissed. Rourke's breath came rough under the mask. Maya was frozen at the head of the bed, one hand still clamped around the tubing as if she could hold the room together by refusing to let go. Whitaker made a broken sound from the floor. "You killed him." Clara stood over Cross, pistol low chest rising once, twice. "He came here to kill a patient." Whitaker stared at the body as if the words belonged in another language. "He said he was FBI." "No," Clara said. "He showed you a badge." She knelt beside Cross and checked him quickly. No pulse, no movement. She pulled back his jacket and found the radio clipped beneath the inner lining. She removed the earpiece, wiped blood from it against her scrubbed leg, and pressed it to her ear. Static breathed. Then a voice. "Cross report. Package status." Clara said nothing. The voice returned sharper. "Cross, confirm retrieval. Team 2 entering south stairwell. Team 3 holds lower service exit. 5 minutes before law enforcement traffic reaches perimeter." Clara's eyes moved to the hallway. No guards. No alarms beyond the ones inside the room. The hospital was still functioning around them. Nurses on other floors were passing medication. Families were sleeping in chairs. A woman in labor might be gripping a bed rail 3 floors down. A janitor might be pushing a mop bucket through the wrong hallway. War had entered the building quietly, and most of the building did not know it yet. Clara crushed the earpiece beneath her shoe. Rourke tried to sit up. His face went gray at once. Blood darkened the dressing beneath his right ribs. "No," Clara said. He gritted his teeth. "I can still shoot. You can barely breathe. Give me the pistol. Give me a pulse that does not look like a dying bird." His mouth twitched despite the pain. Maya snapped back into herself and moved to the wound. "He is bleeding through." Clara looked at Whitaker. He was still on the floor, knees drawn under him, one hand braced against the cabinet. His eyes were fixed on Cross. "Doctor." He did not respond. Clara stepped toward him. "Dr. Whitaker." His eyes jerked up. For the first time since she had known him, there was no contempt in them. Only terror. Clara grabbed the front of his scrub top and pulled him to his feet. His legs nearly failed. "Listen to me," she said. "Your patient is bleeding. You know how to stop that." His gaze flicked toward Rourke. "I cannot operate here." "I did not ask you to operate. I asked you to keep him alive." Maya pressed fresh gauze to the wound. "Grant, I need hands." Whitaker stared at the blood. Then he moved. Slow at first, then faster. He crossed to the bed, stripped on new gloves with shaking fingers, and placed both hands over the dressing. Rourke inhaled sharply. Whitaker's voice trembled. "Pressure here." Clara adjusted his hands. Harder. "I know how to hold pressure." Then stop asking like a resident. His jaw tightened, but he pressed harder. Rourke groaned. Easy, Doc. Whitaker leaned over him, sweat gathering at his temple. If you die after all this, I am going to be extremely annoyed. Rourke gave a thin, painful laugh. Clara glanced at Maya. Can he move? Maya shook her head. Not without opening everything Whitaker repaired. Clara looked at the glass walls, the door, the nurse's station beyond the supply alcove, the ceiling lights, the camera dome in the corner. Every detail arranged itself into distance and cover. Then this room holds. Whitaker looked at her. What does that mean? It means you keep your hands where they are. She turned off the main lights. The ICU room dropped into blue shadow lit by monitors and the pale stormlight at the window. Maya's face became a mask of angles. Whitaker's hands shone red against white gauze. Rourke's eyes followed Clara as she moved. She locked the room door, then dragged the dialysis machine across the inside threshold. The wheels squealed softly. She wedged it tight against the handle and looped a power cable around the base to slow the door if the lock failed. Maya watched her take the tape from the cart. What do you need? Anything heavy. Anything glass. Anything that makes noise if touched. Maya did not ask again. She opened cabinets and passed items to Clara. Metal basins, IV poles, suture trays, a portable suction unit, a stack of glass medication vials. Clara set them with care near the secondary entrance and along the floor by the nurse's station. Not traps, warnings. A hospital was full of things designed to save life. In the wrong hands in the right moment, they could also buy seconds. Seconds mattered. Clara checked Cross's pistol. 8 rounds left. She found a spare magazine inside his coat and slid it into her scrub pocket. She took his radio but left it off. A live channel could betray as much as it revealed. Rourke watched her through half-closed eyes. You are favoring your left side. Clara ignored him. Clara. She looked at him. Blood had begun to bruise her cheek where Cross hit her. Her ribs burned with each breath. I have had worse. Rourke's voice softened. I know. That was the problem. He did know. Whitaker looked between them, hands still pressed to the wound. You two keep talking like this is normal. Rourke closed his eyes. For her it is. Clara moved to the glass and peered through the narrow gap between the blind slats. The hallway was empty. Too clean. Too still. The nurse's station computer screen glowed without a person in front of it. The overhead light near the elevators flickered once, then steadied. From somewhere beyond the south stairwell came the faintest sound. Rubber tread on tile. Not running. Approaching. Clara raised one hand. Maya went still. Whitaker looked up. Rourke's breathing slowed, matching hers old rhythm, finding old rhythm. The stairwell door opened. 3 men entered the corridor in dark tactical clothing weapons, shouldered faces hidden behind night vision optics. They moved in a staggered line, one watching high, one low, one scanning the rooms. Professional. Calm. No wasted motion. Iron Harbor had stopped pretending. The lead man raised a hand. The second moved toward the ICU door. Clara stood behind the nurse's station, body-low pistol close to her chest. She did not aim yet. Aiming too early made people feel powerful. Clara preferred to feel patient. The second mercenary placed a device against the door lock. Maya whispered from inside the room almost without sound. Clara. Clara did not look back. The lock blew with a flat metallic crack. The door jumped inward, struck the wedged dialysis machine and stopped halfway. Smoke curled around the frame. The mercenary shoved once, then again. The heavy machine scraped backward just enough to open a narrow gap. The first man pushed in. His boot touched the glass vials Clara had scattered near the threshold. They rolled and cracked under him. His head tilted. He knew then that the room had teeth. Clara fired through the glass panel beside the door. The shot hit his shoulder and spun him sideways into the frame. His weapon discharged into the ceiling. The second man dragged him back and returned fire through the station. Rounds tore into the desk, punched through plastic chart holders, and shattered the computer monitor in a burst of sparks. Clara dropped flat. Fragments rained over her hair. Inside the room, Whitaker flinched but kept pressure on Rourke's wound. Maya crouched beside the bed, one hand on Rourke's IV line, the other gripping the call button, though Clara had already cut the speaker wire. She understood why. An open hospital channel might call help. It might also tell the attackers exactly who was alive. The third mercenary moved wide, trying to flank through the medication room. Clara saw his shadow pass over the frosted glass. She crawled beneath the nurse's station, ignoring the pull in her ribs, and reached for the portable suction unit she had placed near the corner. She shoved it hard across the wet floor. It slid into the man's path just as he entered. His foot caught. He stumbled, not enough to fall, but enough to lower his weapon. Clara rose and fired once. He dropped behind the medication cart, wounded but moving. The first man, still alive, threw something small through the gap in the ICU door. Clara saw the arc. "Eyes," she shouted. The flash hit like lightning, trapped indoors. White swallowed the corridor. The blast slapped her ears and turned the world into ringing cotton. Clara fell behind the station blind for one breath, then two. Her eyes burned. Her balance tilted. Shapes dissolved into light. Inside the ICU room, Maya shielded Rourke's face with her body. Whitaker cried out but did not move his hands. Clara blinked hard. The world returned in broken pieces. Boots in smoke. Weapon barrel. A gloved hand on the dialysis machine. The attackers were pushing through. Clara fired at movement, not certainty. One round sparked off the doorframe. Another punched into body armor and drove a man back. She rolled right as return fire chewed through the floor where she had been. Her magazine ran dry. The click sounded enormous. The nearest mercenary heard it. He came through the gap fast. Clara threw the empty pistol at his face. He flinched. She came up with the metal basin in both hands and smashed it into his throat. The sound was dull and ugly. He staggered. She drove him into the wall, stripped the weapon sling across his neck, and used it to pull him down. He fought like a trained man, trying to create distance, trying to bring a knee up into her ribs. The knee landed. Pain exploded through her left side. Clara's breath vanished. The mercenary twisted free and reached for his sidearm. A shot cracked from inside the ICU room. The mercenary jerked and fell. Clara looked through the smoke. Rourke lay half-raised against the bed rail, one arm extended, Cross's backup pistol shaking in his hand. Whitaker stared at him in horror. "I told you not to move," Clara said. Rourke coughed blood, spotting his lip. "You told me not to be useful." Then his face went white, and he collapsed back. The dressing under Whitaker's hands flooded red. "Damn it," Whitaker shouted. "He is bleeding more." Clara grabbed the fallen mercenary's weapon and slid behind the station again. "How bad?" Whitaker's voice shook, but his hands worked. "Bad enough that if he does that again, I will kill him myself." Rourke managed a breathless whisper. "Mean doctor." "Shut up," Whitaker snapped. Maya pressed another dressing into place. "Grant." "I have it," he said. This time he meant it. The second mercenary retreated toward the stairwell, dragging the wounded first man by the vest. Clara could have fired. She did not have a clean shot. Beyond them was the long hall, and beyond that were rooms with sleeping patients who had nothing to do with this hidden war. She held. The retreating man spoke into his radio. "Contact is active. Crosses down. Primary asset protected by female hostile. Repeat, female hostile is trained." Clara's mouth tightened. The word had changed. Not nurse. Hostile. The next team would come prepared. The hallway settled into smoke alarms, and the sprinkler hiss beginning overhead. Water pattered onto scorched tile. Red strobes flashed along the ceiling. Somewhere far below, people were shouting now. The hospital was waking up to the wrong nightmare. Maya looked at Clara through the ICU glass. "We cannot stay here." Clara checked the weapon she had taken. 5 rounds in the magazine. Maybe 1 in the chamber. Not enough. "We cannot move him." Whitaker looked down at Rourke's wound. "No, we cannot." He glanced at Clara. The old arrogance tried to return and failed before it reached his face. "What do you need?" Clara almost did not recognize the question coming from him. She looked toward the elevator bank. Time. How much? More than we have. A deep thud rolled through the floor. Not thunder, not equipment. A breach at a lower entrance. Then shouting. Not panicked hospital shouting. Command voices. Multiple boots began to pound up the stairwell from below. Rourke opened his eyes. Pattern. Clara listened. The rhythm was heavy, fast, disciplined. More than 4. Iron Harbor. She listened again. The boots did not pause at landings. They were moving with confidence, not hunting, not clearing every corner. Either they owned the building now, or they believed someone else had already done the killing for them. Clara took the last magazine from Cross's coat and loaded the pistol with numb fingers. 3 rounds remained after the swap. Her left side burned. Her cheek throbbed. Her ears still rang. Water from the sprinklers ran down her face like cold sweat. Maya tied a pressure wrap around Rourke's wound under Whitaker's hands. Whitaker held steady. His jaw clenched so hard Clara could see the muscle jumping in his cheek. Dr. Clara said. He looked up. If they get through me, you do not let them take him alive. Whitaker's face went pale. What does that mean? Rourke answered for her. It means they cut me open for what I swallowed. Whitaker looked sick, but his hands did not move. Clara stepped into the hallway weapon, raised body centered despite the pain. Smoke curled around her ankles. The red emergency lights washed the white walls in pulses, making the corridor look like a heartbeat. The stairwell door at the far end flew open. A laser sight swept across the smoke and landed on her chest. Clara held her aim. Her finger tightened. Then a voice thundered from behind the advancing figures. Hold fire, friendlies. Clara did not lower the weapon. The first shape emerged through the smoke. American flag patch on the shoulder. Correct helmet profile. Correct spacing. The second figure stepped into view, weapon down, but ready hand lifted with 2 fingers tapping twice over his chest. An old signal. One Clara had not seen in 5 years. Safe passage. Her arms stayed locked. The operator stopped 10 feet away. Vesper, he said carefully, we are here for Rook. Behind Clara, Rourke laughed once, weak and broken. Took you long enough. Clara kept the sights on the man's chest for another breath. Then another. Only when she saw the scar across his left hand, the one from a failed door charge outside Mosul, did she lower the pistol. The weapon felt suddenly heavier than it should have. The hallway filled with armed men moving past her toward the ICU. One secured the dead, one covered the stairwell, 2 went straight to Rourke's bed with medical kits already open. Clara stepped back against the wall. For the first time since Cross entered the room, she let herself feel the pain in her ribs. Whitaker looked at the arriving operators, then at Clara, then at his own blood-covered hands. He understood almost nothing, but he understood enough to be afraid of how wrong he had been. At the end of the corridor, past the smoke and emergency lights, an older man in a dark winter coat walked out of the stairwell like he had been expected by history itself. His hair was silver. His face was lined. His eyes went first to Rourke, then to the bodies, then to Clara, standing in soaked blue scrubs with a pistol at her side. Deputy Director Samuel Keene stopped in front of her. He looked her over once, not with surprise, with resignation. I was told there was a nurse trapped in the ICU, he said. Clara wiped blood from the corner of her mouth with the back of her hand. There was. Clara said it without looking away from Samuel Keene. The words should have sounded like a joke. They did not. They landed in the scorched hallway between them, among shell casings, broken glass sprinkler water, and the low groans of men who had come into a hospital believing a nurse would be easy to move out of the way. Keene looked past her. 2 DevGru medics were already inside the ICU room, working over Ethan Rourke with swift, silent discipline. One cut away the soaked dressing at his side. The other checked the chest tubes and traced every line back to the pump. Maya stood near the ventilator, pale but steady, answering questions before they were finished. Whitaker remained at the bedside, hand still pressed hard against Rourke's ribs, his expensive watch smeared with blood, his face emptied of every old certainty. Rourke's eyes were open, barely. When he saw Keene, something like anger moved through the pain. Sir Rourke rasped. Keene stepped into the room. "You look terrible, Chief." Rourke tried to smile. "You always were kind." The nearest medic glanced at Clara. "He is losing pressure." Clara moved before Keene could speak. She was at the bedside in 2 strides, pistol set on the counter behind her hands, already checking what blood had not yet told them. Rourke's skin was cold and damp. His pulse fluttered under her fingers, too fast, too thin. The field dressing Maya had packed over the flank wound was soaked through, but the main repair was still holding. "He is not bleeding out from the repair," Clara said. "He is dumping pressure from pain exposure and blood loss. Warm fluids. More blood. Keep him flat." Whitaker looked at her as if he wanted to object out of habit. He did not. The medic nodded. "Copy." Keene watched the exchange with tired eyes. "You always did hate standing still." Clara did not look at him. "I hate patients dying while people talk." Rourke gave a weak sound that might have been a laugh. It turned into a cough. Blood touched his lower lip. Maya wiped it away before Clara could reach him. The hallway outside filled with controlled motion. Operators cleared rooms. One man knelt beside Cross and photographed his face, his badge, his weapons. Another searched the dead mercenaries with gloved hands. A third stood at the end of the corridor, rifle steady, watching the stairwell that had brought the killers up from below. The hospital was no longer asleep. Fire alarms strobed red against the walls. A voice came over the intercom, calm in the unnatural way hospitals used when panic was already spreading. "Attention staff remain in your current units. Do not use the 6th floor elevators. Security event in progress." Somewhere below, a child cried. That sound reached Clara through gun smoke and medical alarms with more force than any bullet had. She looked through the ICU glass down the broken hallway toward the elevators that led to maternity oncology pediatrics waiting rooms full of people who had come to the hospital with ordinary fear. Chest pain, broken bones, fever, labor, grief. They had not come here to be caught inside someone else's war. Keene saw where she was looking. "We are locking down the building." "You are late." "I know." That answer was too simple, too honest. Clara hated him a little for it. The medic at Rourke's side lifted a blood bag. "Pressure is coming up." Whitaker exhaled, and only then did Clara realize he had been holding his breath. He glanced at his hands as if surprised they were still doing what they had been told to do. The medic reached over. "I can take over, doctor." Whitaker hesitated. For a moment, Clara thought his pride would return. The old Whitaker would have made some sharp remark about not needing help. The old Whitaker would have turned cooperation into competition. But the man at the bedside had seen a fake federal agent try to execute his patient. He had felt arterial warmth under his palms while bullets cracked through glass. He had watched the woman he called only a nurse turn an ICU into a defensive position and hold it long enough for commandos to arrive. He slowly lifted his hands as the medic replaced them with pressure pads and fresh dressing. His fingers trembled when he pulled them away. Rourke looked up at him. "Thanks, Doc." Whitaker stared at him. "You made it very difficult." Rourke closed his eyes. "Been told that." Clara checked the monitor again. Heart rate still high. Pressure low but present. Oxygen holding. The numbers were ugly, but they were numbers a living man had. Keene stepped closer to Clara. "We need to move him. He is barely stable. He cannot stay here." "I know that." "Then tell me how long." Clara looked at the medics, then at Maya. Maya answered first. 10 minutes if we move clean. Less if you rush us and tear something open." Keene nodded. "You have 6. Clara turned on him. "Number." The word cut through the room. Keene's expression did not change. "Clara. No, you do not get to walk in after this mess reaches civilians and start shaving minutes off a patient's life like it is an expense report." The operators in the hallway went quiet. No one spoke to Samuel Keene that way. Not in rooms with rifles. not in rooms where names were classified and bodies were removed before sunrise. Keene looked at her for a long second. Then his gaze dropped to the blood spreading under her left sleeve. "You are injured. I noticed. You are also exhausted. So is he. He has the drive. He has a chest full of tubes and a surgeon's repair that will not survive being thrown into the back of a truck." Keene's jaw tightened. "We have an armored medical transport waiting in the ambulance bay. Surgical team at Peterson is on standby. Airlift is grounded until the storm clears." Clara processed that. Peterson, Space Force Base, was close. Too close for comfort, but better than a civilian ICU with broken glass in the doors. "Route: West Service exit to ambulance bay. Secured by my team." Clara stared at him. "Your team missed cross." Keene accepted that without flinching. "Yes. Then your team secures it again while we prep him right." Keene looked toward Rourke. Rourke's eyes were half open watching them. The old handler and the old ghost. Two people who knew the cost of a bad choice and had made too many anyway. Keene finally nodded. 10 minutes. Clara turned back to the bed. Maya, portable monitor. 2 blood bags. Keep suction ready. I want the chest tubes below the bed line and taped to the frame. No loose tubing, no dangling wires. If anything catches, he bleeds. Maya was already moving. On it. Clara looked at Whitaker. He straightened, as if expecting blame. "You know your repair better than anyone in this room." His throat worked. "Yes? You walk with him. If that flank wound opens, you call it before the monitor does." Whitaker nodded. "I understand." Clara held his eyes. "Do you?" He did not look away this time. Yes. For the first time, she believed him. Keene stepped into the hallway and spoke to one of the operators in a low voice. No radios, not yet. Hand signals passed down the corridor. Men moved toward elevator stairwell service doors. The building answered with distant thuds. Boots on stairs doors opening and closing, the muffled shout of hospital security trying to understand why command had been taken from them by people with no visible names. Clara pulled a roll of tape from the counter and secured Rourke's IV line to his forearm. His fingers brushed hers. "Clara." She did not stop working. "Save your breath." Always hated that order. You always ignored it. His eyes found her face. "You stayed." She taped another line. "I work here." He gave a faint smile. Still lying badly. Her hand paused, only for a heartbeat. Then she reached for the next line. Rourke's voice dropped. "I thought you were dead after Damascus." Clara did not answer. Maya glanced at her but kept working. Rourke swallowed with visible effort. "We heard the safe house went up." Keene said nobody made it out from the west side. Clara's eyes flicked toward Keene, who stood in the hallway with his back turned. "Keene says what he needs people to believe." Rourke looked toward the older man. "Did he bury you?" Clara checked the oxygen connection. "I buried myself." That silence was different. Not tactical. Human. Rourke studied her through pain and medication. Why nursing? Clara almost laughed, but there was no humor in her, because people still bleed here, but no one asks me to make them. Rourke closed his eyes. "That sounds like you." "No," she said softly. "It sounds like who I was trying to become." The words surprised her. She had not meant to say them out loud. Whitaker heard. Maya heard. Keene from the hall may have heard too. None of them spoke. The medics locked the transport monitor to the bed. Maya adjusted the oxygen tank. Whitaker checked the pressure dressing with gentle, precise fingers. His hands had stopped shaking. Clara stepped back and took in the whole patient. Lines secure. Tubes low. Blood running. Sedation light but enough to blunt panic. Airway safe for transport. Wounds angry but contained. Alive. Rourke was alive. For the moment. Keene came back in. Route is clear. Clara looked at him. Clear means what? 2 teams at the ambulance bay. 1 team on the service corridor. Elevators locked. Stairwells held. What about hospital cameras? Looped by our people. Iron Harbor already looped them once. Keene's mouth tightened. Then we will try not to admire ourselves on video. Clara gave him a hard look. He almost smiled. Almost. The bed wheels unlocked. The sound was soft, ordinary, almost obscene after gunfire. They moved. The procession left the ICU room slowly. 2 operators, first rifles lowered but ready. Then Clara walking beside Rourke's left shoulder. Maya at the head with oxygen. Whitaker at the right flank wound. 2 medics beside the monitor and blood. Keene behind them, his coat dark against the flashing red lights. They passed Cross's body. Whitaker tried not to look. He looked anyway. The dead man's badge lay open beside him, gold catching the emergency lights. Was it real? Whitaker asked. Clara kept walking. The badge. Yes, probably. Whitaker swallowed. Then how did you know? His eyes. That is not medicine. No. He looked at her, waiting. She did not explain further. At the nurse's station, Clara stopped. Her badge had snagged on her scrub top, half twisted and streaked with blood. Clara Hayes, R.N. She looked at it as if she had forgotten it was there. Maya noticed. Clara. The bed rolled a foot ahead before Rourke lifted one finger weakly. Stop. The medics paused. Clara unclipped the badge. No one moved. For 2 years, that small piece of plastic had let her belong somewhere. It opened medication rooms. It logged her into charts. It told patients who she was before they trusted her with their pain. It had hung against her chest while she held the hands of the dying, cleaned vomit from children's shoes, found warm blankets for widowers, and worked double shifts because there was always another person waiting behind another curtain. It was not just a cover. That was what Keene never understood. A cover was something you wore over the truth. Clara Hayes had become part of the truth. She placed the badge on the counter beside a cracked computer monitor. Carefully, Whitaker stared at it. You do not have to do that. She looked at him. Yes, I do. His voice was low. Because of them. Because by morning, everyone who wants Vesper will know Clara Hayes was here. Maya's eyes filled, but she blinked it back. Where will you go? Clara did not answer. Keene did. With us. Clara turned on him. That was not your answer to give. Keene accepted the correction. No, it was my request. She almost laughed at that. You do not request. I am learning. Late in life. Apparently. The corridor ahead was clear. They kept moving. The service elevator waited with its doors open. An operator held it from inside weapon angled down. The elevator floor had been covered with sterile sheets and absorbent pads. Someone had done that for the blood. Clara appreciated it despite herself. As they entered, the overhead lights flickered. Everyone froze. The monitor kept beeping. The lights steadied. The doors closed. For the first time since the fake agent entered the ICU, the world narrowed to a metal box full of breathing people. Rourke's eyes stayed on Clara. Still have the same face when you are angry. Clara watched the numbers. I am not angry. Maya glanced at Whitaker. Whitaker glanced at Keene. Rourke's mouth curved. She is angry. Clara adjusted the bloodline. I am busy. She says that when she is angry too. Whitaker looked down at Rourke. You should stop talking. Rourke whispered, you first. Whitaker opened his mouth, then closed it. Maya almost smiled. The elevator descended. 6th floor, 5th, 4th. At the 3rd floor, the lights dimmed again. This time, the elevator jolted. The monitor alarm chirped. Maya grabbed the rail. Whitaker leaned over Rourke, hands hovering near the wound. Clara looked up at the panel. Keene pressed a finger to his ear, then stopped himself before touching the radio. The elevator halted between floors. No one breathed for one beat. Then a voice came from the speaker above them. Service elevator failure. Please remain calm. Maintenance has been notified. The voice was automated. Too smooth. Clara looked at Keene. He was already looking at her. Whitaker whispered no. The operator inside the elevator raised his rifle toward the ceiling hatch. Maya steadied the oxygen tank. Rourke's eyes opened wider. Clara stepped to the control panel and hit the emergency button. Nothing. She pulled the panel cover open with the edge of the laryngoscope handle still in her pocket. Wires sat behind it clean and untouched. Not sabotage at the panel. External control. Keen's jaw tightened. They found the system. Clara looked at the elevator doors. A thin, black gap separated them. Beyond it, concrete shaft wall. They were between floors not aligned with an exit. The operator reached for the ceiling hatch. Clara caught his wrist. No. He looked at her. They can drop in from above. If they wanted above, we would hear movement. A faint metallic sound came from below. Clara looked down. Everyone followed her gaze. Something touched the underside of the elevator. A scrape. Then another. Whitaker's face drained. What is that? Clara lowered herself slowly, placing one ear near the floor. Metal against metal. A clamp. Then a hiss. Cutting tool. They are coming from below, she said. Rourke closed his eyes. Efficient. Clara stood. Can you override the elevator? Keen looked at the operator. The operator shook his head. Not from inside. Maya's voice was tight. He cannot survive a gunfight in an elevator. Clara looked around. Small space. One operator. One pistol with limited rounds. A critically wounded patient. Oxygen tank, blood bags, metal bed frame, electrical panel, ceiling hatch. Floor access panel bolted shut. Not enough room to fight. Enough room to deceive. She looked at the oxygen tank. Maya closed the main valve. Maya obeyed. Clara disconnected the spare oxygen tubing from the mask line and attached it to the secondary tank. She opened the tank just enough to create a sharp hiss near the floor seam, then taped the tubing down so the flow pushed through the narrow gap. Whitaker stared. What are you doing? Making them think they cut into a leak. Keen understood first. Clara. If they are smart, they pull back. And if they are not, Clara took Cross's pistol from her waistband. Then they get educated. The cutting sound stopped. A muffled voice below. No words clear. Then the elevator jerked. The emergency brake whined. The car dropped 2 inches. Maya gripped the bed. Whitaker threw one arm across Rourke's chest. Rourke's face twisted in pain. The oxygen hiss continued through the floor gap. Another voice from below, sharper now. Then silence. Clara counted. 1, 2, 3. A dull thump sounded beneath them, followed by frantic scraping. The people below were retreating. The operator beside Keen exhaled. Clara held up a hand. Not yet. A second later, 3 suppressed shots punched through the elevator floor from below. The rounds tore upward through the corner where a standing person might have been. One struck the ceiling. Another hit the rear wall. The third shattered the panel light. Glass rained down. Maya crouched over Rourke's head. Whitaker shielded the wound. Keen flattened against the wall with one hand inside his coat. Clara dropped to one knee and fired through the floor where the muzzle flashes had bloomed. Once. Twice. A cry echoed up the shaft. The elevator lurched again, then started moving. Not down. Up, Brace Clara said. The car rose half a floor, stopped, then dropped fast enough to lift Clara's stomach. Maya shouted. Whitaker held the bed rail with both hands. The operator slammed one palm against the wall to steady himself. The brakes caught. Hard. Rourke cried out despite himself. The monitor alarm shrieked. Pressure dropping, Maya said. Whitaker checked the dressing. Bleeding increased. Not catastrophic, but we cannot keep doing this. Keen looked at the doors. We need out. Clara glanced at the floor indicator. Between 2nd and 3rd now. Too low for their planned route. Too high for a clean exit. The operator forced his fingers between the doors and pulled. Keen joined him. Clara helped with one shoulder despite the pain in her ribs. The doors opened 3 inches, 6, then 10. A concrete wall filled most of the gap, but the bottom third opened onto the 3rd floor landing. Not enough for the bed. Enough for a person. Clara looked at Keen. Get a team to the 3rd floor. I cannot use comms. Then yell. Keen gave her a look. She stared back. The older man turned toward the gap and shouted with a voice that seemed too large for him. 3rd floor service elevator. Friendly trapped with casualty. Secure the landing. For 3 seconds, nothing. Then boots pounded outside. A voice answered. Landing secure. Clara looked at the operator. Out first. He slid through the gap onto the 3rd floor and rolled clear. Maya stared at the opening. We cannot get the bed through that. No, Clara said. We raise him. Whitaker understood and shook his head. Absolutely not. If we tilt him too much, the chest tubes may pull. Then they do not pull. This is insane. Yes, Clara said. Keep up. They worked with surgical care in a space designed for freight and bad lighting. Operators outside pried the doors wider. The medic disconnected what could be disconnected and taped what could not. Maya held the airway and oxygen. Whitaker controlled the flank wound. Clara guided the chest tubes and bloodlines as they raised Rourke on a transfer sheet. Rourke stayed conscious through it. Barely. Sweat stood on his forehead. His hand found Clara's wrist once. Sorry, he whispered. For what? Bringing it to your door. She looked at him. You were dying. That is allowed. They lifted. Rourke's face went white. The monitor screamed. For one breath, Clara thought they had lost him. Then the medics outside caught the sheet and pulled with smooth force. Rourke slid through the elevator gap onto the 3rd floor corridor, followed by the monitor, the blood, the oxygen, then Maya. Whitaker climbed out next, awkward but fast. Clara started after him. Keene remained inside the elevator. Go, she said. He looked down at the floor where blood had begun to seep through the bullet holes from below. They will reach the shaft again, then stop admiring the scenery. He almost smiled again. This time it hurt his face. You became difficult. I learned from bad leadership. He let that land. Then he climbed through the gap. Clara was last. As she pulled herself onto the 3rd floor, pain tore through her ribs so sharply her vision blurred. A hand caught her under the arm before she hit the floor. Whitaker. He steadied her. For a second they were both surprised. Then he let go carefully as if embarrassed by decency. Your left side, he said. Not now. You may have a fractured rib. Then it has company. They moved again. The 3rd floor was surgical recovery. Half lit. Mostly empty because of the lockdown. A nurse stood at the far station with both hands raised while 2 operators checked doors. She saw Clara, and her face changed with recognition. Clara. It was Denise Alvarez, the charge nurse from the ER. She had come up with extra supplies strapped to a crash cart because, of course, she had. Denise was 61, built like a church bell, and had once told a drunk man twice her size that if he vomited on her shoes, she would make him clean the whole bay with a toothbrush. Now she stared at the blood, the guns, the body on the transfer rig. Clara's voice softened. Denise, I need warm blankets and a clear route to the West Service Hall. Denise looked from Clara to the operators. Then back to Clara. She did not ask who the men were. She did not ask why Clara had a pistol. She did not ask why Dr. Whitaker looked like he had aged a decade in an hour. She turned to the supply cabinet. How many blankets? All of them. Denise moved. That was nursing. Not panic, not ceremony. Need appeared, hands answered. Whitaker saw it. Clara saw him seeing it. They wrapped Rourke in warm blankets and moved through the recovery hall toward the service corridor. The operators formed a moving shell around the bed. Keene walked with one hand inside his coat now. He did not draw the weapon, but Clara knew it was there. At the West Service corridor, the lights were out. Not dim. Out. The hallway ahead was black except for red alarm strobes pulsing from the far end. An operator lifted night vision to his helmet and peered down the corridor. Blocked. Smoke near the loading dock. Keene's face hardened. Iron Harbor. Maybe. Could be fire response doors. Clara smelled the air. Smoke. Electrical insulation. And something else. Diesel. They are at the loading dock, she said. Keene looked at her. How do you know? Because hospitals do not smell like diesel unless something with an engine is inside where it should not be. Rourke's voice was barely audible. Vehicle breach. The floor trembled. A crash thundered from ahead. Somewhere down the dark corridor, metal screamed against concrete. The operators raised weapons. Maya looked at Clara. Another way. Clara pictured the hospital in her mind. She knew the public halls, the patient routes, the staff passages, the supply tunnels, the places smokers hid during snowstorms, the service doors that stuck in summer, the elevator that smelled like bleach because a transport tech once dropped a suction canister there and never forgave himself. Laundry chute corridor, Clara said. It connects to the old ambulance entrance. Denise frowned. That entrance has been closed for years, not from the inside. Whitaker looked at her. How do you know that? Clara started moving. Night shift. They turned away from the dark service hall and pushed Rourke through recovery, past curtained bays and dark monitors toward a narrow staff corridor lined with linen carts. The old ambulance entrance was a relic from before the hospital expansion sealed from public use, but still accessible for disaster routing. Clara had found it during her first month, not because she was curious, but because she always needed to know how to leave a building that might someday turn against her. The corridor ended at a double door marked storage. Denise swiped her badge. The lock blinked red. She swore under her breath. System lockdown. Clara looked at the hinges. Move. One operator stepped forward with a pry tool, but Whitaker surprised everyone by grabbing a fire extinguisher from the wall. Allow me. He struck the badge reader hard enough to crack the casing. Once, twice. On the third hit, the panel sparked and the lock clicked. Denise stared at him. Whitaker breathed hard. I have always hated that thing. They pushed through. The old ambulance bay smelled of dust rubber and cold air. Emergency lights glowed faintly along the floor. Snow had blown in under the outer doors, forming a thin white line across the concrete. The space was empty, except for stacked chairs, unused wheelchairs, and a faded sign pointing to an entrance that had not welcomed ambulances in years. Keen's operator crossed to the outer door and checked the seam. Can open manually. Keen looked at Clara. Transport is on the other side of the building. Then bring it here. Comms may be compromised. Clara pointed to the wall phone near the old dispatch desk. Landline. Keen picked it up. No dial tone. Clara went to a red emergency box and opened it. Inside was an old disaster phone, the kind hospitals kept and forgot until everything modern failed. She handed it to Denise. Call facilities. Tell them to open external bay door 4 manually from the maintenance cage. Denise took it. You sure they will listen? Clara looked at the blood on the floor, the armed men, the dying patient. They will listen to you. Denise gave a grim nod and dialed. The operators formed a perimeter around the bay. Maya checked Rourke again. Whitaker changed the pressure dressing with hands that were not calm but were competent. Clara stood near the outer doors and listened to the snowstorm outside. The wind had softened. That worried her. Storm noise covered the movement. Quiet gave the world edges. Keen joined her. You are bleeding. She glanced down. Blood had soaked through her left sleeve and darkened the side of her scrubs. She did not remember when the graze had reopened. Everyone is. Clara. She looked at him. For a moment, the years folded. She was 28 again, sitting in a windowless room, while Keen placed a file in front of her and told her the country needed people willing to walk into places maps pretended did not exist. She had believed him, or wanted to, or needed the belief to make sense of what came after. Now he looked older. So did she. You used me, she said. His eyes stayed on hers. Yes, the honesty was quiet. It did not forgive anything. She looked back toward Rourke. And Rourke. I sent his team because the defector asked for him by name. Why? Because Rourke had pulled him out of a village years ago when Iron Harbor was still pretending to be security support. The defector trusted him. And someone sold them. Yes. Who? Keen did not answer quickly enough. Clara turned fully toward him. You know, I suspect. That is not enough. No, it is not. The bay door shuddered. Everyone turned. A chain mechanism groaned. Cold air pushed under the seal. The outer door began to rise inch by inch, revealing snow darkness and the harsh white headlights of an armored medical transport reversing toward the entrance. For 1 second, Clara allowed herself to believe they had made it. Then the headlights went out. Gunfire snapped from the darkness outside. Operators returned fire at once. The bay filled with muzzle flashes, shouting, and the sharp smell of powder. Maya dropped over Rourke. Whitaker crouched beside them, one hand on the wound, the other shielding the blood bags with his own body. The transport driver slumped against the wheel. The vehicle rolled backward another few feet and stopped crooked in the doorway. An Iron Harbor gunman appeared beside the front bumper. Clara fired twice. He dropped out of sight. An operator near the door took a round in the shoulder and spun to the concrete. Keene dragged him back by his vest, surprisingly strong for a man who looked built out of old decisions and black coffee. Clara moved to the side wall using stacked chairs as cover. She could see 3 shapes outside through blowing snow. Maybe 4. They were using the dead zone beyond the transport, trying to pin the bay until another team could flank. "They are not trying to kill all of us," she said. Keene fired once into the darkness. "They want the drive. They want him alive enough to open." Rourke coughed from the floor level. "Still here." Clara looked at the transport. Armored sides, rear doors facing away, front cabin compromised, driver down, engine running. A terrible idea took shape. She looked at Whitaker. "Can you drive?" His head snapped up. "What? Can you drive?" "Yes, but not through gunfire." That was not the question. Whitaker looked at the transport, then at the open bay, then at Rourke. "Number." Clara held his gaze. "Yes, I am a surgeon. Then get your patient to surgery." That landed. Whitaker looked back at Rourke. The wounded SEAL was gray under the blanket's jaw-clenched, eyes open enough to understand. Doc Rourke whispered, "Try not to hit anything important." Whitaker almost laughed. It came out broken. Denise appeared with a set of keys from a wall cabinet. Old ambulance keys. Maybe one fits the bay gate. Clara took them, then gave them to Whitaker. He stared at the keys in his bloody hand. Clara stepped close. "Listen to me. You get in the driver's seat. Keep low. When we load him, you drive straight out, left through the maintenance lane, then follow the access road to the base convoy. Do not stop for badges. Do not stop for police. Do not stop for God unless Maya tells you he coded." Whitaker's breathing was fast. "What will you do?" Clara looked toward the snow. "Make them look at me." He understood. So did Maya. No, Maya said. Clara checked the pistol. 1 round. She took a rifle magazine from the wounded operator and tossed it to Keene's nearest man. "You need to keep the rear clear." Maya stepped into her path. "Clara, there is no time. You are not bulletproof." "No." Maya's eyes shone with anger. "You say that like it is fine." Clara softened for half a second. "It is not." Then she moved. She ran low across the bay, sliding behind the cracked concrete barrier near the outer door. Gunfire followed her at once. Rounds punched into the wall behind her, sending dust into the air. The operators used the shift to push Rourke's stretcher toward the transport rear doors. Whitaker moved with them, hunched low, keys clutched in one hand. Clara fired her last round at a muzzle flash near the snowbank. The gunman ducked. Empty. She dropped the pistol and grabbed a flare from the emergency kit mounted by the bay door. Old road flare, red cap, chemical stink. She struck it against the concrete. Red fire spat to life. The snow outside glowed blood-bright. Vesper Keene shouted. She threw the flare high and left. Every eye followed the burning arc. The operators loaded Rourke. Whitaker climbed into the driver's seat through the passenger side because the driver's door was blocked by the slumped body. He shoved the dead driver aside with a sound that was half apology, half horror. Maya climbed into the back with Rourke and the medics. Denise slammed the rear doors. The engine revved. An Iron Harbor gunman stepped into the open, aiming at the windshield. Clara had no gun. She took the laryngoscope handle from her pocket, ran straight at him through the snow spray, and threw it with everything left in her body. It struck his face shield hard enough to make him flinch. That was all she needed. An operator shot him from the bay. The transport lurched forward. Whitaker drove like a man who had never broken a rule in traffic and had suddenly discovered sin. The vehicle slammed through the half-open bay door, clipped a snowbank fishtailed, then found the maintenance lane and roared into the storm. Clara stood in the doorway breathing hard, empty-handed. The remaining Iron Harbor shooters fell back into the dark as Devgrew fire pressed them from the bay. Keene grabbed Clara's arm. Move. She tried to step. Her legs did not answer properly. The pain in her ribs spread like black ink. The world tilted. Keene caught her before she hit the concrete. For a moment, she heard nothing but the storm. Then Denise was there, hands on Clara's face. "Stay with me, Hayes." Clara blinked. Rourke. "Gone," Denise said, moving. Whitaker. Driving like a lunatic. Clara closed her eyes. "Good." Keene and Denise pulled her back into the bay as the last shots faded outside. The operators secured the perimeter. Someone shouted that local police had finally reached the outer road. Someone else called for a medic. Clara sat against the wall, one hand pressed to her left side. Keene knelt in front of her. "Clara." She opened her eyes. "Do not make that face." "What face?" "The one before you say something expensive." He looked almost wounded. "Almost. Your cover is gone." She leaned her head back against the wall. "I figured that out when the first assassin used the elevator. Iron Harbor will know by sunrise. Not just that Vesper is alive, that she has been living as Clara Hayes in Colorado Springs." Denise stood nearby, hearing everything now. Clara looked at her. The older nurse's face did not change much, but something sad entered her eyes. "That your real name?" Denise asked. Clara took a breath. "Yes." Keene glanced at her. Clara ignored him. Denise folded her arms. "Good. I hate learning new names." A laugh escaped Clara before she could stop it. It hurt badly enough to turn into a cough. Denise crouched and pressed gauze to Clara's bleeding arm with more force than necessary. "You should have told me you were getting shot at today. I would have packed better shoes." Clara closed her eyes for a second. That almost broke her. Not the bullets. Not Keene. Not Rourke bleeding in her hands. Kindness. Ordinary, irritated kindness from a woman who had worked beside her for 2 years and still chose to treat her like Clara after seeing Vesper standing in the smoke. Keene looked away, giving her what privacy a ruined ambulance bay could offer. The first gray light of dawn began to push through the storm clouds. By then, the shooting had stopped. Iron Harbor had failed to take Rourke, but Clara knew failure would not end them. It would sharpen them. Men who built companies out of war did not stop because one hospital went badly. A secure vehicle pulled into the bay 40 minutes later. Keene offered Clara a hand up. She took it because standing alone would have been foolish, and she was tired of confusing pride with strength. As they walked towards the vehicle, Whitaker returned in the armored transport escorted by 2 military vehicles. The front bumper was bent. One headlight was gone. Snow and blood streaked the hood. The driver's door opened. Whitaker stepped down slowly. He looked awful. Hair disordered, scrubs soaked. Face gray with shock and exhaustion. A strip of gauze wrapped around one hand. But he was standing. Maya climbed out from the back. She saw Clara and nodded once. That nod told her Rourke was alive. Clara exhaled. Whitaker crossed the bay toward her. For once, he did not walk like the floor belonged to him. He stopped an arm's length away. "Commander Rourke made it to Peterson," he said. Clara nodded. Pressure, still low. They took him straight in. "Drive." "I did not ask." "That is progress." He looked at her badge, then seemed to remember she was no longer wearing it. "I owe you an apology." Clara was too tired to help him through it. "Yes." The blunt answer made Maya look down to hide a smile. Whitaker accepted it. "I was wrong in the trauma bay. I was wrong in the ICU. I was wrong about you." Clara looked at him. "And," he swallowed, "and I was wrong about what nurses see, what they know, what they carry before a physician walks into a room and calls it his." Denise made a small approving sound behind them. Whitaker glanced at her, then back at Clara. "I let my title do my thinking." Clara studied him. There were easy things she could have said. Sharp things, deserved things. Instead, she said the thing that mattered. Do not do it again. His eyes held hers. I will try not to. No, Clara said. Trying is what people say when they want credit before change. Do not do it again. Whitaker nodded slowly. I will not. For the first time since she had known him, Clara believed he wanted to become smaller in the right places. Keene opened the rear door of the waiting vehicle. We need to leave. Clara looked back into the ambulance bay. Denise stood beside Maya. Operators moved through the snow. Hospital security hovered at the edges, unsure where authority began now. Beyond them, Pike's Peak. Mercy rose into the dawn wounded but standing its windows catching pale light. Somewhere inside, patients still needed medication. Families still waited for news. Nurses still walked rooms with warm blankets and quiet hands. Clara had wanted to stay among them. She had wanted a life measured in shifts, not missions. A life where the worst thing waiting at dawn was paperwork, cold coffee, and the ache in her feet after 12 hours on tile. She looked at Denise. I am sorry. Denise shook her head. For saving people. For bringing this here. Denise stepped close and fixed the collar of Clara's blood-stained scrub top like she was sending a younger nurse into a difficult family meeting. You did not bring it here. It followed a patient. We treat the patient. Clara's throat tightened. Denise patted her cheek once. Now go do whatever terrifying thing you apparently do when you are not stealing my trauma supplies. Clara nodded. Maya hugged her carefully, avoiding the ribs and failing to avoid the pain entirely. You are terrible at asking for help, Maya whispered. I have been told. Listen next time. Clara almost smiled. Bossy. Dr. Maya corrected. Nobody is perfect. Maya stepped back, wiping her eyes with the heel of her hand. Whitaker stood a few feet away, silent now. Clara walked to the nurse's station just inside the old bay, where someone had brought down the few things collected from the 6th floor. Her badge lay on top of a folded towel. The plastic cracked, the clip bent. Beside it was a strip of surgical tape. Someone had written one word on it in black marker. Vesper. Clara stared at it. Then she picked up the badge. Keene watched from the vehicle. I thought you left that behind. Clara turned the badge over in her fingers. No. She slid it into her pocket. Clara Hayes comes with me. Keene said nothing. She took the strip of tape and looked at the name Vesper. A call sign was not a person. It was a tool. A sound used in radios and reports and memories people drank to forget. It had followed her through deserts and safe houses, through blood and fire, and choices that never washed clean. She folded the tape once and placed it in the same pocket as the badge. Not because she wanted it. Because pretending it did not exist had nearly gotten people killed. Clara climbed into the vehicle. Keene sat beside her. The door closed. For a moment, the world outside became muted glass and gray dawn. The vehicle pulled away from Pike's Peak Mercy. Clara watched the hospital shrink behind them. Keene handed her a tablet. On the screen was a frozen image from a surveillance feed. A man in a dark suit entering an airport lounge. Older, clean-shaven. Familiar in the way classified nightmares were familiar. Clara looked at the face. Her blood went colder than the snow outside. Keene spoke quietly. His name is Martin Vale, former intelligence liaison to Iron Harbor. He had access to Rourke's extraction codes. Clara stared at the image. Former. He disappeared 6 hours after the ambush. Why are you showing me this? Keene looked forward. Because Rourke's team deserves the truth. Clara's reflection stared back at her in the dark window. Bruised cheek. Blood in her hair. Nurse's scrubs under a tactical jacket someone had thrown around her shoulders. Not only Clara. Not only Vesper. Both. She turned off the tablet. Then stopped driving like I am cargo. Keene glanced at her. Where do you want to go? Clara looked toward the road ahead where dawn broke over Colorado Springs in a thin line of silver. First Peterson. I want to see my patient. And after. Clara leaned back, one hand resting over the pocket that held both names. After that, we find the man who sold him.